Almost 3 weeks away from Chapter 4. What is up, SmackNPie here. Welcome back to another Dark Deception video on the channel. I am keeping my word on making Dark Deception video every single day until they're released. This is also the start to our final new series before Chapter 4, so you know what? I'm not even gonna waste any more time. Let us begin. Torment Therapy, or most specifically Nurse's Level, is the first portal of Chapter 4, or 6th nightmare out of 10 in Bierce's Ballroom. I would like to throw a small theory here for no reason other than it's at the top of my head. As we know, Bierce, our so-called companion in this realm of dark world, has no control over what nightmares we end up with in these portals. However, once we get to experience them, she knows almost everything about it immediately. Same is said for Malak. Whilst he sends his demon to haunt us and prevent us from getting that ring shard, it is only our imaginations and what's going on in our head that leads us to what we see, something I'll touch on in my Dark Deception Explained series. But let's get back to Torment Therapy at hand. We learned the name in one of the Q&As by Vincent Livings, creative director of Dark Deception. Vince doesn't do things without a reason. Sometimes, yes, they can be pretty random, but with these level names, there's a story behind each level and its name. I went into details for Torment Therapy, you can check that video. However, one of the characters that'll appear and be featured heavily in Chapter 4's Torment Therapy is none other than Matron. And let's see what she has to offer in this upcoming chapter, and who is she, and what kind of role she will play in Chapter 4. Matron is one of the most protective characters of Dark Deception apart from bosses. Matron Designs seem to be out there, but it was mentioned by Vincent Livings in a Q&A that they've made massive changes to that model. So what you see here on the channel and online is kinda outdated, and not to mention without textures too. Matron plays a leader-ish role, as we all know, leading Reaper nurses into all nasty business they do in a hospital. Understand, these demons are made by Malak, but they take face of our worst nightmares, so this isn't technically who they are behind the scenes. Malak's creations are weird, but we'll talk about it some other day. From what it seems, Glowstick Entertainment are definitely going for the ancient Matron that seems more scary and people would be terrified of her. Not saying anything to her, obeying her every command. She's kind of like a doctor from Little Nightmares, but instead of surgery, she does all the managerial stuff. I'll touch on it in just a second, you'll understand what I'm trying to say here. Matron from earlier designs can be seen as this big nurse, formerly called by the community Thick Nurse, or as we would like to call her back in the day, Fuck Nurse. Matron can be seen holding a giant and unearthly huge syringe with God knows what inside. She also seems to be using support by riding on the almost wheel cart that is a direct throwback to the late days of Matron popularity in the real world. She's also hiding her face. This is what I meant when I said Malak's creatures are weird. Both Reaper nurses and Matron hide their face underneath this first aid medic bag. Their real faces are the horror of Doug and other patients. Think of it as scarecrow fear toxin. Whatever your nightmares are, your fears are, they're replaced by underneath of these head bags. She seems to be obsessed with her duty, role, and her outfit is their living proof of that. I also want to point out that my head was tempted to draw the line and say that Matron somehow represents Dr. Angela Simmons, but she really doesn't. Let's face it, Matron is Matron of the story, leader of the hospital, overlooking the staff and equipments and even patients. It is common for matrons to do that. Nowadays, we don't use these words anymore, but its definition goes as something like this: a woman in charge of domestic and medical arrangements at a boarding school or other institution. Matron is also used for someone who has a high social position. Social position, that keyword is really important dealing with matters overall. So you get it. Matron is someone who's in kind of like authority figure, but medical authority figure, kind of like ruling the wards in hospital, taking care of patients, overlooking arrangements in and out of institutions. But what is she doing here in Dark Deception, and most specifically Chapter 4 of Doug House's story? This is my take, but Matron, the word, isn't exactly modern. It was used a lot back in ancient times, and when I say ancient times, I don't mean like 600 BC maybe. There is a negative reputation casted with the word matron, which is why even after being rebooted in early 2000s, it didn't last long, making it the perfect candidate for a monster in Dark Deception. Dark Deception, as mentioned, need not to be Malek's visions of how these monsters are portrayed, rather how to make Doug's nightmares more impactful towards him. Hence Matron, someone you kinda not want to mess with, hoping to fix whatever it is with normal nurses before Matron is here, leading up to the perfect, by the way, watch previous video to know what I'm talking about, leading up to the perfect gameplay sequence. Reaper nurses are main enemies, and whilst we're not saying she's the boss, her chances of appearing during a zone is very likely, not only switching things up in a constant scary gameplay, but also keeping the players on their toes. At the same time, story-wise, it makes sense for her to appear every once in a while. Matron is in a win-win position from all corners. I really hope we don't get to see her face to face, but hey, it is inevitable, as we'll get to see her, face her, and fight her in Chapter 4's Torment Therapy. Oh my god. Matron will be one of many important characters in Chapter 4. Her voice will be a noun, her role is a mess as of now. However, I am pretty confident that our concerns and questions will be tackled, acknowledged, and answered in Chapter 4. It's like a torturous place, and Reaper nurses alongside Matron think we're ignorant of true peace and healing they provide. We see it as torment, they see it as our therapy. Much needed one, by the way, and we all meet in Torment Therapy in Chapter 4. Come back soon for Reaper Nurse's video on the channel. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that would do it for this video. 21 days left, 3 weeks in total. We're getting super juicy close. Just let that sink in. We now are only 3 Fridays away from getting our hands, third Friday being obviously the Friday when the game drops. My Twitter finally got unlocked. Thank goodness gracious. Subscribe right now, help me get to 50k before Chapter 4, and also follow me on Twitter and Insta at @SmackNPie, and I'll see you boys in the next video. Until then, take care and peace.